2 weeks ago, I posted a video titled 5 Unpopular Fashion Opinions. And in that video, I talked about 5 ideas in and around fashion that have been on my mind for the last 3-ish months or so. After I post a video, I typically read through the first 50 to 100 comments in that video. And in doing so, I stumbled across one of the most interesting critiques I've ever had on my content from a commenter named An Albino Black Bear. Interesting name. This comment is the focal point of today's video, so let's see what it says. I'm a fan of your work and agree with your critiques. Respectfully, I'm not sure you're adequately addressing your own hypocrisy in this conversation. You're a powerful YouTuber with way too many clothes and shoes. That's part of how fashion content creators maintain their brand and earn their authority as experts. You're participating and serving as a powerful model to millions of people. When you look good, you're setting the bar higher for others to spend more on increasingly specific fits, more detailed pieces, etc. Can you have both a dynamic fashion sense and an ethical lifestyle? I'm not sure. It seems like you and other higher quality fashion creators are trying to shift your content to being more about fashion as ideology rather than look at my cool shoes number 32, which again is appreciated. But it reads as disingenuous to have your foot in both worlds while preaching a conservative lifestyle. I think Fashion Elitist does a pretty solid job at implicating himself in the system, which is narcissistic, elitist, and aesthetically driven. But neither he or you seem willing to fully confront the real moral logic of your arguments and how that would reduce your consumption and the subsequent popularity of your content. I'm not sure I'm ready to either, or how that would even look, but it would certainly start with dramatically reducing your wardrobe to practice what you preach, as well as reorientating your content to something more wholesome and less superficial, which I think you could do and genuinely hope to see. Shout out to An Albino Black Bear for leaving such an interesting comment. After reading it, I sat and contemplated the ideas presented to me for a long time, until eventually I decided to share the comment with you guys, my audience, on the YouTube community tab. About 70 of you left really amazing comments to the original ideas presented in the original comment. To cut to the chase, I want to talk about 3 specific aspects of being a quote-unquote fashion influencer: consumption, authenticity, and influence. I hope at the conclusion of this video, more people understand my perspective and as a result can better identify the best course of action for how you want to interact with my content as well as the fashion industry as a whole. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Drew. What it do? It's nice to meet you. Let's talk fashion influencers. One of the main messages that I got out of this comment boils down to a simple question with a relatively complicated answer. That question is, how can you participate in and benefit from the fashion industry as an influencer while also criticizing and lamenting particular aspects of that same industry? To me, this question is something that I think about quite often, especially as it relates to this idea of consumption. In a lot of my videos, I call fashion a consumer art form, meaning that fashion is a type of art in which at its core is created for the purpose of monetary gain. The reason I use this rhetoric to identify fashion is because I believe that there are opposed dualities pulling at what the idea of fashion is from both ends of the spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have all of the designers, creatives, and artists who create because they love designing. A lot of times, these individuals feel as though that creating art is their calling or their purpose, which is really special. And on the other side of the spectrum is the capitalist system that forces each individual to be productive monetarily, meaning to be productive in a way that produces income for the individual or for the business or businesses that they work for. Being an artist and making money aren't mutually exclusive things, but there is a big difference between creating something because you love to create versus creating something to increase a corporation's bottom line. Every industry that falls under the notion of consumer art form can only exist if the artists in those industries are continually pumping out new forms of consumer products. If you're not accumulating more revenue for your business, then your art won't be able to provide your basic necessities. This truth can either be a strong motivator to pump out new collection after new collection in the example of the fashion industry, or this can be a really crippling way to create. in which artists have to rely on other forms of income to sustain their livelihood. There are of course exceptions to this idea, but I think most people in the fashion industry understand this to be true. Now, how do I bring this back to myself and the comments made by an albino black bear? I do not design clothing, at least not currently, but the way in which I see my role in the fashion industry is as a guide. I try to help consumers learn about the stories, benefits, and features of specific aspects of clothing that ultimately make it worth their hard-earned money to purchase. I filter all of my suggestions and recommendations through the lens of my personal experience, as well as through accumulated knowledge and research. More importantly, I attempt to highlight the artists who put their livelihood on the line by choosing to create art for a living. Over the 2.5 years that I've been on YouTube, my content has always centered around highlighting independent creatives. I of course have my individual biases that play a role in me being more of a fan of one genre of fashion over another genre of fashion, but my bias is probably what makes you who's watching this video interested in my opinion compared to someone else's. I want to make this abundantly clear. Almost everyone, if not everyone in the fashion industry has more clothes than they could ever wear. That's the nature of the industry. As someone who considers themselves to be a filter, one of the best ways to purify my recommendation is to vacuum in the products that I think are worth recommending. Analyze the features and stories associated with these products, and then make a video about my experience so that you can make a more informed decision on whether or not you want to purchase this item or whether you don't care for it. Some of the most viewed videos on my channel are pickups videos, in which I showcase products that I've been interested in for the last 30 to 120 days. If you're new here, I always let my audience know this before I start the pickup section of a video. I say, hey, this isn't normal. Consuming to this level shouldn't be the standard for you or for anyone who isn't in my line of work. I sort of equate this statement to the button maker, someone who makes buttons, saying you don't need to own as many buttons as I do because you're not a button maker. In all earnesty, would you ever tell a button maker or a button manufacturer CEO or whatever it may be that they own too many buttons? Or would you ever tell a seamstress that they own or have too many bowls of yarn? The materials used, the products used are integral for me in order to learn, evaluate, and ultimately recommend here on YouTube. And as a part of my bias, I always try to uplift and support small, niche, independent brands, as opposed to larger, inequitable fashion houses. Learning about fashion and making videos about fashion is now my job. And I don't think people always see it like that for quote unquote fashion influencers. And maybe that's not how you see it for me. But the way I view it is this is truly my job. Now, of course, there are plenty of ways to learn and tell stories about fashion without consuming anything at all. The most viewed video on my channel is exactly that. It's an opinion piece comparing and contrasting trendy versus timeless items. And I would say over the last 12 to 16 months, I've cut back considerably on my full-scale pickup videos, as I've realized that it doesn't necessarily resonate with me anymore as much as it used to. In the aforementioned main comment, an albino black bear considers me to be a powerful influencer with way too many shoes and clothes. But I think it's important to recognize whether or not if I had these shoes or clothes, or if I didn't have these shoes or clothes, that these items that have been brought into the world by these individual companies would still exist. The cogs of the fashion industry turn whether or not I post videos or I don't. I understand someone's frustration with viewing my lifestyle and content as impressionable, and in the future I will continue to emphasize this notion that the way someone like myself who is in the fashion industry consumes compared to someone who is outside looking in should be very different. One last point that I want to hone in on is the brands that I emphasize. If you know my channel, then you know through the course of the last 2.5 years that I've been on YouTube, I've been a big advocate against the promotion of fast fashion. Fast fashion is defined as the business model of replicating recent catwalk trends and high fashion designs, mass producing them at a low cost, and bringing them to retail stores quickly while demand is at its highest. And I think I want to add to that definition is that fast fashion not only replicates catwalk trends, but it'll replicate any trend that is bubbling up. From my understanding, fast fashion, environmentally, is the deadliest dagger to why the fashion industry is so harmful. Fast fashion perpetuates unfair wages, it delegitimizes independent artists, it creates the most waste, etc., etc. 9 out of the 10 items that I recommend are either from small or boutique operations. Even what I'm wearing right now, this is a bleeding indigo pseudo type 1 herringbone twill jacket from a small brand out of the Netherlands. I had to talk about them because I just love this jacket. And if it's not small or boutique or independent designers, it's heritage brands or it's shopping secondhand. I feel a true sense of pride knowing that this is how I've conducted myself on YouTube. And so I want to reiterate, if you've made it this far in the video, I want you to know that you'll never need to acquire or own the level of clothing that I have. Because for a large chunk of my wardrobe, I only wear about 30% of it within a given 6-month period. Currently, I'm obsessed with Japanese selvage denim, and I've worn the same exact jeans, the sugarcane Okinawas, for 41 consecutive wears. I have them on right now as well. I don't need to show you guys, but trust me, I have them on. The paradox in fashion consumption for me, an individual business owner and content creator, is a tightrope walk. My message will always remain the same. Support smaller brands, don't overconsume, and engage with others online in a positive manner. If you believe me to be disingenuous or hypocritical, then comment down in the comment section solutions to tackle these feelings. And albino black bear suggested that I should just cut back altogether and consume less. To me, it's kind of like saying or telling the button maker to just make less buttons, or telling the seamstress to sew less clothing. My livelihood is wrapped up in the videos that I make. If the system that I was born into provided me a clear roadmap to do what I love and make a livable wage while placating to the opinions of others, I would take that route in a heartbeat. I already highlight tons of small, boutique, and sustainable brands. I've talked about buying secondhand. I've talked about the qualms of fast fashion. Consumption is a vital part of the fashion industry. It's a vital part of every industry in the world. As 25-year-old me, I can say with full honesty and full courage that I strive to the very best I can with the situation that I currently live in. I strive to be the best creator I can be while being the best role model I can be. I hope that the great majority of my audience sees that in me. I really do. One of the ideas that I've heard recently is that under a capitalist system that there is no ethical consumption. It's not possible because there are so many inequities baked into the system that the moment you press purchase on an online purchase or an in-store purchase from a high-end fashion label to a fast fashion brand or a boutique store, there's some level of harm either being done to the environment, being done to an individual, or being done to some level of the system. I would love to hear some of your thoughts and ideas on consumption down in the comments. This leads us to the next section in which I want to talk about, which is authenticity. Once you get to a certain level as a fashion influencer, more and more brands want to put their products in your hands. Naturally, modern day social media marketing in a lot of ways is predicated on particular individuals having or owning products so that their audiences view the products that they own and as a result want to own them as well. And one of the most important distinctions that I've made with my content, as well as a lot of other great fashion content creators, is distinguishing between needing to know something about a product versus needing to actually own that product. I have never said you needed to own any product, ever. That is something that does not resonate with me. What I have said is that there are things about this product, a feature, an aspect of the story that will help you in making a more informed decision about whether or not you want to buy this product. This is kind of reiterating the notion that I'm a guide, teacher, or storyteller as opposed to a just flat out influencer. Back to what I was initially saying, brands reach out to me every single day asking if I want to sample one of their products from their upcoming or newest collections. This is common stance for influencers in the fashion industry. For me, the overwhelming majority of the time, I say no. My opinion is always my own, and I think you should know that. And as my channel has grown, I see more and more people questioning or highlighting aspects of my character that they see are illegitimate, which at first kind of hurt me, hurt my feelings, because I try to live my life with as much honesty and authenticity as possible. It's important to know that while I do script out my videos, unless it's a vlog, it's because I want my thoughts to be concise and clear. I've tried talking from the hip about dense fashion topics, and I always end up either stuttering, becoming tongue-tied like I just became right there. You probably didn't even notice, but it just happens to be that it doesn't work out well for me if I don't script the videos. Scripting also allows me to be consistent and has helped me to create a system that I can rely on to make videos week after week after week. But scripting isn't about reading words off of a piece of paper or off my phone or something like that. It's just a guide for speaking, which means that every laugh, every intonation, every pause is as me can get. Last, I want to talk about influence. Another one of the most interesting aspects of an albino black bear's comment is the fact that they pointed out that I stand as a model for millions of people. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about content creators of my size is that my audience views the audience that I currently have, which is about 175,000 subscribers on YouTube, in the same vein as someone like Mr. Beast or MKBHD. The 175,000 subscribers that I currently have are true fractions compared to the creators with real impact and influence. Someone like Emma Chamberlain comes to mind, who's gone to back-to-back Met Galas. Or Jackie Aina, who I had the lovely pleasure of meeting not too many weeks ago in New York City, is closer to a celebrity than a social media influencer. Those people and so many others within the same niche of fashion YouTube have way more influence than I view myself to have. Regardless, I'm not going to be naive. I do have influence, but I view influence more as a burden than an honor. I've always postured myself in my brain as someone who is no more special than the people on the other side of this screen. Of course, I have a particular level of privilege. I have my experiences. I have my family environment. But overall, I truly view myself as equal to the people who consume my content. I'm just a human being like anyone else. If you really pay attention to my rhetoric, I lean more into using fashion as a way to uplift other people's lives and mindsets. And after you watch my videos, my hope is that you learn a little bit more about a particular aspect of culture, of style, or as fashion as a whole, while getting to know me a bit more in the process. In my opinion, I've never been the driving force for why a particular product has sold out or why there's something that's trending right now. I might capitalize on the attention of a particular trend, but I'm never the reason why something is trending or why something falls out of favor. Trust me, internet is so large and the spheres of influence are so varied. If I've ever influenced you to do anything, I hope I've influenced you to think critically about the purchases that you make within the fashion industry. I hope I've influenced you to pay more attention to the artists and the history behind the clothing. I hope I've influenced you to explore your personal style. And I hope I've influenced you to use fashion as a way to positively affect your life. What did I miss? I feel like this is such a dense response to a comment that happened a few weeks ago. But yeah, I probably still left some food on my plate. Regardless, as always, I'm spreading peace, love, and positivity in 2023. So that means I'm spreading peace, love, and positivity to you from me. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful rest of your day. Abianto. Peace. What is good, post-vid? Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Here's a fist bump for the one time. Bop. Thank you so much for staying to the end. Leave a hashtag PVV if you made it to the end. I'm trying to post 3 videos this week, so buckle in. Let's get to the next video.